Hey there, hey friends, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice, and welcome back to another Thrifty Review video. Today we are taking a look at Holbein HWC Artist Grade Watercolors. Now the relevant information from the box is that the tubes are 15 milliliters. Of course, there are 18 colors. They are produced by Holbein Works Ltd. They are made in Japan. They do conform to the ASTM D4236 regulation. They contain cadmiums or cobalts because there is the California cancer label warning here. And it gives other information. Keep out of the reach of children, not intended for use by children. Keep tubes and containers tightly closed when not in use. So here you get 18 tubes. What I'm assuming is aluminum, and I will add that that box is actually pretty sturdy. It's very sturdy enough definitely to keep the tubes protected. The tubes have a screw off top. There was no foil covering, so they don't present the medicine tube feel or the budget tube feel by any means. Now, all of the relevant artist information is printed on the actual tube, and I'll kick that off by saying, upon doing some research on the paints, I did find out that Holbein is really animal friendly. They do not use any animal or animal byproducts in their watercolors. Therefore, these paints do not contain any oxygall. Now, I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit. So the tube is going to have the colors kind of stock number, the name in this case, mineral violet, that's going to be presented in other languages. It reconfirms that the tube is 5 milliliters or 0.17 fluid ounces. There's some Japanese lettering here, and then it says not intended for use by children. Again, the AP seal of approval is again where they're made, which is in Japan. And then right under the UPC code, which I'm assuming is for open stock purchasing. I will say, side note, that while doing research, neither on Jerry's or Blick's, where I was able to find them open stock, could you actually purchase the 5 milliliter tubes. The tubes are much bigger open stock, so I'm not sure if maybe in Japan you can purchase the 5 milliliter tubes open stock as well. I just wanted to add that. And then there is also the pigment information as well as the transparency information, the light fast ratings presented, how light fast the paints are, and a lettering to let you know what series they fall into. What I found really interesting about these is that a lot of these paints, out of the 18 colors, are actually dual to triple pigment colors. There are very few single pigment colors. 7 out of the 18, if I'm not mistaken, may be single pigment. But we'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute. Other than that, I found that the consistency of the paints were pretty universal across all tubes. They all seem to be filled pretty much to the same capacity. I did not experience much binder paint separation at all when I went to pan them up. So I panned them up in this airtight palette, and I really only put down a drop of paint because a dot size of paint goes a long way and will get you through a lot of different paintings. So I gave the paints time to dry down before I started to do any swatching or any work with them, because I like to paint from dried down paints. Now the paints dried really great, no issues, no cracking or super drying. As a matter of fact, they almost have like a semi-glossy feel to them even after they dry. And I can say that maybe attributed a little bit to the palette, but still, great paints, absolutely no problem with them drying down. With that said, I had no problem with them re-wetting, and I did not have to pre-activate the paints in order to get them to activate well with just like from the simple touch of a wet brush. So I found all this to be really inspiring, and it made the painting process pretty easy. Let's take a look at some of the swatching that I did. So I swatched the paints out and I transferred all of the artist information to my swatch sheet. Now I will say this is 100% cotton that the paints are swatched on. And I do believe that across the time that I tested them, all the paper that I used was 100% cotton. So I did not actually use them on like a wood pulp paper or student grade paper, just in case that makes any difference to anyone that's listening to my experience with the paints. As I said earlier, you get a lot of colors, but I think it's going to be really up to the person that's purchasing this set to decide whether or not the colors that actually come in it are useful to you. One, there's a John Brilliant #2, which I know is like a flesh tone color, maybe used more by comic book artists, possibly people who do portraits. It really doesn't fall into the working style that I normally have, but it is a paint that I kind of want to play around with and try out because it does have a bit of an opacity to it, and I feel like it'll really mix well to make sort of creamy colors. Standardly reds, pretty decent range of yellows and greens, and when we get to the blues, it's sort of when I sort of was like, wait, I'm not sure what's going on. First, they present you with a compost blue, which is a mixture of PB15, which is a phthalo, and PW6. And then they give you a cobalt blue hue indicating that it's not a true cobalt, and it is a mixture of the PB29, which we know to be ultramarine, and PB15, which is phthalo. But it's just something about that particular formulation that doesn't feel like maybe a cobalt to me. They give you a Prussian blue, which is a single pigment, one of the few 7 out of the 18. Yellow ochre is a little bit more opaque than the rest of them. The rest of the paints are like super transparent. So is the burnt sienna, the burnt umber, the ivory black. Of course, your earth tones you're gonna kind of expect that from. I did find when I glazed them that some of them, the more you glaze, they sort of took on this shiny appearance once they started to dry. But still, I had absolutely no problem with the mass tone or diluting them down with water in order to get a lighter wash. There was not a huge shift from wet to dry with the paints, which I really did enjoy. And I cannot comment enough on how transparent I think the paints are, although you are getting dual and triple pigment paints in some cases here. Now, I saved my color mixing to do with you guys as a test, but of course I've already mixed the colors several different times and played around with them. So before we jump over to that point, let's just kind of look at some of the things that I've done with them. You're going to find these across the channel, YouTube, or in Patreon if you are a member of the Creation Station, because some of them may have been done in some of the lives there. So, in no particular order, there was the candy cane done, and I really enjoyed this one. This is the first painting when I really realized just how transparent those paints actually are. They are so beautiful. They handle really beautifully. However, this is also when I first learned that these paints do not have a super flow to them. And that is, in all honesty, one of the drawbacks for me particularly. Not that that may affect anyone listening, but I happen to be an artist that likes for my paints to kind of whoosh out across the paper, and these are not those. As I said earlier, they do not contain an animal byproduct, so they don't have ox gall in them. Therefore, they are not going to just burst out and bleed out and boom out across your paper with a wet into wet wash, as you might get from some of your other artist grade watercolors. However, that does offer really great control for those people who like controlled washes, those people who actually like to control their paint, not have it kind of whoosh all over the paper. And in some cases, even in my painting style, I do, lean that way. But for the most part, I really like paints that kind of explode. I love things like Daniel Smith and Shinhan PWC, Magello Mission Gold. Those are Paul Rubens. Although Paul Rubens may not have as much flow as some of the other ones that I named, it still has a pretty moderate flow to it. These, none. So that is something to take note of. However, very beautiful, saturated, transparent colors. They really take well to 100% watercolor paper. Again, not a huge shift, so you're not losing a lot of saturation. Transparent, so I'm able to layer, and you're able to see the previous layer through. They do not lift as you're painting, so if you need to layer, if you're one of those type of artists, especially like maybe comic book artistry, coloring book artistry, where you're doing a lot of layering. Even in my painting style, I just feel like they worked really, really well. I also painted this little gnome, which came out Christmas Day. And here was more of a mixed media project where I mixed the paints with ink as well as with metallic watercolors. And again, no issues with them. They play really well with everybody in the sandbox. And I just feel like the colors are absolutely beautiful. Now, that brings me around to a couple of things. One, I wish the set had an ultramarine blue in it, and it does not. And because of that, I found that especially when I'm trying to mix the neutral that I normally mix, which is between like an ultramarine blue and a burnt sienna or a burnt umber, you know, I'm kind of doing a blue and a brown, which is a desaturated orange. So it gives you more of a neutral color. I was finding that those mixtures had, and from my experience or what I see with my eyes, seemingly a green undertone. And I really couldn't understand that considering the fact that the color is mixed from PB29. And I am speaking specifically of the cobalt in this case. I'll be honest, I do wish it had an ultramarine in it. I could have done without the ivory black because I typically mix my own neutrals. I could have done without the white. I have plenty of gouache, and I don't, you know, I have pastel paints as well. I could have done without the Jean Brilliant, not because I don't think it's a useful color, but because I'm not a comic book artist. I don't really do portraits, although I may get into them. I just feel like right now with my painting style, there may have been a more useful color for me. We talked about the cobalt blue. I really could have done without the compost blue as well. I think the Prussian blue is pretty decent. It's a really beautiful bright color, and I love the fact that it's single pigment. The mineral violet is another beautiful color in the set. The yellow ochre does have a little opacity, but again, beautiful color. And the permanent green #1, more of their yellow green. I really wish there was a sap green. Maybe even if it had to be dual pigment, maybe something that wasn't triple pigment. And both of the greens contain phthalo green, so they have a phthalo green base, although it seems to be the least pigment, the pigment that's used the least in the mixture. So, I mean, there's that information. Now, while I'm doing this, we'll go ahead and talk about the price. I did try to look these paints up on Amazon. I did not find the 18 tube set available. There are some other sets. I think there's a 12 tube set, there's a 26 tube set, but because I didn't find the 18 tube set, I'm not going to list it in the video description, and I didn't really worry about the pricing over there. Next, I looked on blick.com, and I also searched around Jerry's. I found this set both in the 5 milliliter tubes on both sites, and they run about the same price, which is somewhere around $82.99, $83 for 18 tube set 5 milliliter tubes. Now, there are a lot of things about that I feel like may be good or bad. In my case, this set was donated to me, so I did not have to make a purchase out of my own pocket, just in case that information makes a difference to anybody. Now, although I think that the paints at $83, making them somewhere around $450, $460 a tube, considering the transparency of them, the way you're able to layer them, the fact that I feel like, you know, they'll work really well for a lot of different painting styles. May make it worth it, but you have to weigh that against the price of other professional sets out there, which actually carry a much more economical price tag. I'm going to start off with using the Rose Madder. You will see here that it re-wet right away with no problems. Let's get that here. And we're just going to do some mixing. We may mix, try to mix on a paper as well. With that, we'll use the lemon yellow. And we'll use the, I guess we're going to use the compost blue. I just want you guys to see how these different colors mix together. I had a thought. I know I was on a train of thought. It'll come back to me in a minute. In this next one, we'll use the Crimson Lake, which I feel like is an absolutely gorgeous and beautiful color. We'll go with the Permanent Yellow Deep. which is more of your golden tone. It's going to lean more gold versus the lemon yellow, which leans more so towards a lemon. And this is going to lean more so towards the sun. And then we will go with the, I guess we're going to go with this cobalt blue hue. And I'm also going to mix a neutral from it so you can see, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. All right, so let's start off with the Rose Madder. See if I can mix up here. And we'll mix it with a little of the lemon yellow, and let's see what type of orange we're going to get. I'll put that here on the paper. It's pretty decent color. I feel like it's desaturated. I don't feel like it's as bright and beautiful as it could be. You may be able to mix the vermilion. It's going to give you a better orange. Vermilion is already sort of orange leaning red. So I feel like maybe if we mix that with the lemon yellow, it's going to give you a more vibrant orange. And it does. Still maybe not as punchy as I would want it to be, considering the fact there's not an orange in the set. So, but not bad. Not bad at all. Let's try again with the Rose Madder. And this time we're going to mix it with the compost blue. And let me put a little bit more Rose Madder in that. There we go. A really deep, saturated violet tone. Again, not really bright. We'll see what we get over here on this side once we mix them. And then we're going to do the lemon yellow. Got to find a place to mix in. We'll do the lemon yellow and we'll do the compost blue. It's not a bad green. You can kind of offset one color to the other to get a variation of that color. I feel like that would be pretty decent as far as a earthy green is concerned. Let's go with the Crimson Lake. And I'm really interested in seeing how this is going to mix with the cobalt. I want you guys to see. You're going to get a beautiful, beautiful color. I feel like it's much more vibrant and punchy than the violet we got here. Let's go with the Crimson Lake. And we're going to mix a little bit of that sun leaning yellow in it. This is the Permanent Yellow Deep. And as you can see, it's almost a blood orange. Very beautiful color though. Absolutely gorgeous tone. So this is the joy of mixing paints. Play around with your paints. See the different variation of colors you can get. Make yourself some type of color chart and just go to town. And I suggest that even along with swatching, because it's really going to help you get to know your paints a lot better. Let's try this last one out. Let's mix out this yellow deep, and we're going to mix it with some of the cobalt. And let's see the green we get here. I feel like I need a little more yellow in it, although it did turn green right away. Put a little more yellow in that. And see, I look like, ooh, now see, that is more of the sap green. Now, they should have put that mixture in there as one of the greens. Beautiful, beautiful color. Beautiful color. So, can get some really clean, transparent mixtures. Now, the only mixture I didn't care much for was the cobalt blue. And then I'm going to mix it with either the burnt sienna or I'm going to mix it with the burnt umber. Okay. Now, when you take that blue and you mix it with the burnt sienna. I want to see if I can bring it up. I don't know if you guys can see it. It has, to me, this greenish undertone to it. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. And maybe it's just my eyes. Maybe I'm going crazy. But that's what we get. It's more of a almost olivey dark brown versus going neutral, going like gray. See, it even looks green there. So I'm pretty sure that phthalo blue mixed in there is green shade. That's going to be the assumption. And for me, it's just not the most useful for mixing when it comes to blues. I would definitely add an ultramarine to the set, but this is just me. Let's mix that with the burnt umber. And again, you can see it has a greenish undertone to it. We'll put this one here. But it's definitely much more gray leaning, although I can still see some green in it. I'll add a little bit more of that blue. See if we can get it to go more gray. Okay, and that's definitely blue-green. So, and that's what I'm saying. How was I able to mix a blue-green, right? Okay, I added a little bit more burnt umber in it. So you can get a neutral, but it's still not exactly gray. And I'm not sure if anybody else experienced that with these paints, but that was my experience with them. Although, just to keep the review fair, I did not add any colors from any other set. I painted everything. I painted every single thing using only these paints. So the Jingle Bell, the Gnome, the Peppermint, the Candy Cane, as well as the little mug with the candy cane. So just, you know, Christmas paintings, because I painted throughout December. But I like the paints. I like the paints. I think that they are a great addition to my artist collection. They're not my favorite paints in the world. I do believe that at the price tag of $83, you have to make the educated decision about whether or not your pocket feels like, from what you've seen, of what you heard from this review, or maybe other reviews that you've watched on Holbein, whether you think they're worth it to you, and whether or not you have something that you could already use. Now, I did find that there are other paints that these were a little comparable to. I'm not going to pull them out, but I will just name. Like, I found, like, you know, there's not a huge difference between these and the other Japanese watercolor that I have, which is Turner. They seem to have a really similar color scheme to it, similar saturation and brightness. And I think Turner are a little bit more affordable. And then there are other paints that are not made in Japan that I feel, you know, kind of give you some of the same quality offer. I do believe that the 5th generation of Paul Rubens give you just as much transparency, maybe a few more single pigment colors. I feel like, you know, I personally like Mission Gold, their pure pigment set. Although it is a little pricey, how much of the paint you get in those tubes, for the fact that you're getting pure pigments and that they're transparent and that they offer great light fast ratings. So I'm just saying, shop around. I'm not saying don't get them, but just shop around and make sure that they're the best buy for you. So there you have it, guys. Really quick, really straightforward. Hopefully you found some of this information helpful in some shape, form, or fashion. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up by sprinkling a little love. You can share the video. Sharing is caring. And maybe there's someone else out there who would love to hear this information on this professional watercolor set. If you're new to the channel, or if you're returning and you haven't subscribed, do consider hitting that subscription button and that notification bell so you know when we upload and when we go live. Jump in the comment section. Let me know what you think, how you feel. Have you used these paints? What was your experience with them? Did you have the same experience with trying to mix, you know, your neutrals, especially if you were trying to use one of the blue? What was your experience with the blues from the set? What did you pay for them? Were they $83 at the time that you bought them? I mean, because maybe if you already have these paints, at the point that you bought them, they were priced where, you know, you could it would make sense. But just, yeah, let me know your thoughts. You can also check the video description for all of the relevant links. I definitely always suggest go check out the Defyant Art website and check out all the great things going over there. And remember, as I always tell you, my friends, just keep creating.